Yeah.
The look on Anastasia's face when she realized that this was not the end, but the
Yeah.
beginning. Like we launched and like we're getting feedback and like I had to push updates and like we're building communities. Uh, that's a whole other topic, but
Well, that's a very
um,
similar kind of path like Brian and I have to this for the like this podcast, for example. Like we launched the podcast and like our family's like, "Oh, so you're doing that podcast thing." Yeah. And oh yeah, so you're like done with that now. I'm like, no, not really. It's just like just starting kind of thing. Like both our wives and everything, like we had to explain to them that yeah, we're recording like once a week, maybe more, after work. So it's kind of like work after work. Oh, you're getting paid, right? No, not really. It's just I'm just doing it because I like to do it, and it was one of the things that like really like re-energized like Brian and I. And I can see like from you guys and your interaction that it is like a central part of your lives, even though it's like you've launched it and you're still working on it, but it's like the thing you come together, you have in common, and you're like creating together. And it's like a cool shared experience. And that does come across in the game. I was telling Brian about that. Like the game, you can tell it's made with a lot of passion, and it has a very, it's, I don't even know how to really describe it. People just have to play it, but it's something that you want to play. Like when you're playing it, and if you just want to keep playing it. And so that's, to me, that's actually, it shows a lot of the passion that you put into it, because sometimes you can pick up a game, and if you guys are gamers, you guys know, you'll play a game a little bit and you're like, this just isn't very good. It's like, and it could be way more polished than a game like Bard Card. But Bard Card is super polished in that way that it wants you to play and invites you to play. And that's what I kind of think like when you put it down, you kind of think about it. So like I've been thinking about it, like I'm like, I should get back to that sometime. So a lot of games for me, I can just put down and be like, nah, no, I'm not going to do that again. But this one I want to play. So I think that does come across, that passion comes across in the final product.
Mm-hmm. I want to.
no, that's really happy. That makes me happy. Thank you.
That's good. And my wife says, "Are you still playing your game?" I'm like, yes, I am. I said, I'm going to hit number 2 before I hit this podcast. Gotta make sure I
That
climb
means
the ladder a
something.
little bit here.
That's
So
It
wow.
does. If you can, I don't know if it's possible to dethrone Rifles.
right,
I don't know if he has the maximum number of points, but
with that,
I can't even imagine what you're doing right now to get those points.
well,
I can't even
it's just
imagine.
like steady effort, but also too, I have a theory about when you pushed one of your updates. So there was like a short time in a day where I was number 1 and I thought it was a mistake. I'm like, there's no way I'm first. And like I don't have my phone to set to automatic updates. So I just will maybe batch it like once a week or something, right? And when you released how you did the experience points, and so some people were subject to that if they were playing the game but hadn't done, they did the update. I think I was one of the later updaters, so I had the benefit of leveraging the old uh, basically the old construct where like the artifact weapons like would never be like beat up or retired, right? So I could just
Wow.
whack things at full strength and just take it out. So I think that's why I got to 3. So my guess is that the rifles person, whoever that person may be, I'm coming after you, just so you know. Uh, so it might take me a while, but I'll get there. I think like they probably didn't do the update, and so they had the benefit of the old. I don't know. That's just a theory of mine. Don't know if it's there or not, but we'll see. Anyway, but that's a fun thing. Let's talk about the constraints too on your creativity. So this became, we're recreating Middle Earth back in the early 2000s, and now it came down to a mobile game, and there's some stories and different characters interwoven in it, but you chose like a retro look. Now some of it may be like it helps give you all the warm fuzzies from growing up and what that means. But talk about that creative choice, because oftentimes I think now when you have like for those who don't know all the game development engines and stuff, like these things are powerful to really like render stuff. I mean, it's gorgeous to look at. If you remember like Atari and you saw like the Unreal Engine now, it's just completely night and day difference. Why like an 8-bit retro look? And even like the sounds too. It wasn't like you had like a full symphony just blaring along. Like, tell me about the decision to do this in your presentation. What was it that you wanted to evoke in others?
The first the first art for it must be the card art. I spent a lot of time developing that on paper before I got my iPad. And nothing else that you see came until much later. So the card art is all single color because I am a screen printer, and single color prints are the easiest prints. They're also very high contrast, and I knew that the art was going to be displayed pretty small. I still don't think I've done a great job of making them simple enough at their display size, but I fortunately have probably one of the smallest viewports that our game is on, so it looks the worst on my phone. In any event, that style of the card art really came from practical considerations like that, visibility at a small size, and also my lack of professional graphics skills. I was literally, at the beginning, I was drawing those images as black on white paper, imagining how they would look inverted, taking a picture on my camera with an app that could invert it and going, oh, that doesn't look right, and then going back and drawing it. I've since gotten much faster at it, and I can draw white on black or every color combination I'd like on the iPad, so that's a lot faster. So, and then this sort of title screen art does look 8-bit or whatever you want to call it. That is also just hand drawn now. I just kind of draw the squares, so it's sloppy in a way.
Okay.
But I just can't make anything, so that felt natural. It's also relatively low color count, easy for me to wrap my head around. But yeah, I mean, I have the same feels that Kevin does. I didn't have any consoles growing up in the 80s, but I played it at my friend's house. So it seems like a nice introduction, although it's kind of jarring to me still that there's multiple styles. I'm hopefully my worst critic. Like the making the UI feel like it fit with the cards was important, but highly constrained by things that Kevin could explain to you. Maybe I should just say that I don't know what's possible, so I have to constantly go back to Kevin and find out what we can do, what we can't. But I'm approaching it from somebody who drew for screen print for like 10 years straight, and that's just what makes sense to me, I guess. Yeah.
So this is the interesting point. So for those listeners now, there was the pre-conversation before the record button of kind of about some of John's experience in screen printing and doing those things. Tell me this: if you were to design Bard Card, let's say it was a pure analog game, like you guys said you did, right? Would you still choose the limited color palette because of your experience with screen printing and stuff, or would you kind of go for, like, Magic the Gathering is a pretty elaborate design. Like, if you had to go complete analog, would you go fancy and schmancy, or would you kind of still keep it a very simple presentation?
Oh no, I still definitely keep it simple. Then I could even like control the production of it, which really gets me going because I like making physical stuff. But when you bring up Magic the Gathering, it's funny. My favorite cards, or the art for my favorite cards, is usually quite old, and sometimes by artists who were not professionals. That are really simple. You could call it art brut or outsider art, or even things that seem related to folklore. I really like old stuff before people were attempting to make it realistic, like before Renaissance,
Right.
I feel like comics were invented in the Middle Ages. When you look at old woodcuts that guys made, it look like comic books. And that stuff really draws me.
That's very good.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, I'm going to turn the question to you now. So, have this aesthetic that you're working with. Now, for the work that you're doing, very much didn't exist 60 years ago. There's no pen on paper for these type of things. I mean, you think about how computers were programmed, way back in the day, not too far back in the day, but in computer terms, way back in the day. When you're dealing with this, and in the era that you grew up in, because we're of similar vintage in terms of how we grew up, tell me how your analog sensibilities have informed how you code and design in the digital space. Because they're very different tool sets. And sometimes, though, the decisions are informed differently depending on like where you come into the frame.
Yeah, no, it's. I'm trying to think of how to answer this question. So just thinking. So when I think of analog gaming, is physical pieces, cards, paper. There's not. I was gonna say there's not a lot of ways you can interact with the things. I mean, you can pick up you can pick up a car, or you pick up a car. You can pick up some dice. You can roll it. I guess it depends on the game. Whereas when I think of I'm trying not to step on my feet. I was gonna say, like, when I think of modern games, just very, they seem just very large, complicated, maybe confusing, flashy. I'm not a modern gamer like you. I'm a mobile gamer, and there a lot of the games I play are like very, very, very simple. So when I think of something like Bard Card, I just try and harken back to just like the simplicity of like a simple toy. Like if you have something that is like a child's block, you want to pick it up, you want to feel it, you want to like maybe roll it, maybe you want to put it in your mouth. Like, what does this taste like? Like to have something tangible. Where like with but this is very simple interactions. Like you're not rolling, you're not reloading a gun, you're not climbing up a ladder and there's like bats flying in your face. You're tapping these little cards on a screen. So I want it to feel inviting. Like if you were going to see like a board game with like pretty colors and pieces, you want to pick it up, you want to look, you want to look at that top hat of Monopoly, or like play with the money or something, because it's colorful, but it's also intuitive. It's like, hey, you know what this is going to be used for. So I guess intuitive is a good word. Like with Bard Card, we don't really have a tutorial or a walkthrough. Like when you boot it up, you're not going to have a bunch of text where it's like, hey, you need to do this and this is how this works. My hope is that people can just pick it up and know how to play in a way. I mean, there definitely are things you'll need to figure out along the way. Like we've got an inventory system and weapons break, and there are these like tasks that you can find. But at the core, it's just you're matching cards. This is something that most people in their lives have done at some point. So I guess like just the intuitive nature of just having like a toy is kind of what I was really aiming for with the core game mechanic.
Have you guys played Memory? That game?
Oh yeah,
which might be as old as the 60s, right?
Yep. Yeah. Oh
yeah. Guess who was another one? We had the panel of people, and you say like, does your person have blonde hair? You say no, and you knock down all the people with blonde hair.
What's that called? I have played that too.
Yep. Guess who was that one? I'm trying to think of some of the other ones too. But for me, card playing on both sides of my family, and they were serious. It was cribbage and up and down the river and buck euchre and golf and
buck euchre.
There was money buck euchre. Yeah, there's euchre and then there's buck euchre. And so I've only I didn't know there was a regular euchre. I just knew there was buck euchre because that's what my grandparents played. And then, there's regular euchre. I'm like, I have no idea how to play that.
Yeah, sidebar, where is your family from who taught you buck euchre? Because we're from Michigan and they play euchre in Michigan.
Yeah. Both Josh and I, we met in second grade, and we were from central Minnesota.
Oh, so interesting.
And I'm
Midwest.
I'm from northern Michigan, like the UP. So.
Oh, hell yeah.
I've never met anybody from the UP.
That's just because they all move away, and because of the snow,
I got jumped by a seagull in Escanaba, and then I said,
"You're done. You're done." Yeah.
Yep. That also explains the name shortening too, because you said, "Hey, I'm John," and so I had to ask you, "Well, what is your name?" And so the name shortening. Kevin, were you Kev ever growing up?
I mean, I think John calls me Kev.
There you go.
My mom calls me Kev. People call me Kev. Yeah, you can call me Kev.
All right. Kev. There you go.
Also, just not taking offense, like shortening names. Like that's just like a Midwest thing anyway. Like you're just too polite to ever like correct somebody. Like I've had people call me, like one person called me Mark for years, and I just got to the point where I didn't correct them. And when I was gone on vacation one time, like somebody came in and like, "Hey, where's Mark? What do you mean, Josh?" Yeah. And I came back from vacation. They're like, why did you not tell me your name was Josh? I said, well, after a while it was kind of funny, and then it was just kind of like weird to say anything because I let it go for years. So I'm just like, non-confrontational to the max. That's me,
Wow, that's amazing.
Sits on a throne of lies.
Yeah.
The throne's name is Mark.
Do you find people to be more confrontational on the West Coast, Kevin, than in the Midwest? I feel like Seattle is the epitome of non-confrontational, but.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially, so I live in the Bay Area right now, and it just feels faster. People, I mean, I can't pigeonhole people as a group,
right.
but it's a different feel up here than Michigan for
So
sure.
I live in Southwest Florida right now, and it's definitely like a different pace of life here because the weather is the same all the time. It's like 75 and sunny. So like nobody's really like, that was one thing that, for example, like we'll kind of get on a tangent, like game playing. Like when I was a kid in the summer, my mom would take our video games away and say, go outside because it's nice. So when I moved down here, it was nice every day. So it felt really weird to be inside playing video games. Like but when in the middle of summer, when it's like 100 degrees and the humidity is like maximum, nobody that lives in Florida is outside. Everyone's inside because it's too hot. And then in the winter, they're like, well, it's too cold. So they're sitting inside. But it's like all the people that come down here for vacation, they're the ones you see out all over the place. Or the people that move from like the Midwest, and there's a lot of them. They move down here. They're always outside. They're like, why is nobody outside? Well, it's too hot right now. And then the winter comes and like, why are they not outside? I'm like, well, it's too cold for some of them. Because you'll see kids at the bus stop, and I kid you not, it's like 45 degrees in the morning right now, which is, I'm out there in short sleeves and T-shirts and whatever. But there's kids, they're bundled up in their winter coats with boots and like scarves, everything, just like you would up north, like at the bus stop when you were a kid. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? But it's true. It's just like, it's what you get used to. So it's kind of, it's very interesting. It's like wherever you live.
You might catch your death of cold.
Yeah.
That's what people used to say.
But that's okay because, it's death is fun and you save your progress and you go back again the next day on school bus and you dress differently.
Guess we'll find out, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Let's not encourage minors to go try that exercise. So, let's talk about this, guys. So I love some of the history that goes along with this. When you guys now say, okay, we decided on like an app type game, and we're gonna do this. Kevin, one of the things that you said, we can talk about maybe some of my gameplay experience, maybe in the after show here. But like, tell us about the feedback loop, because one of the things that is really useful in learning, just in life, is a high fidelity feedback loop. And oftentimes, when you put something out there, especially like a game like this, there's a lot of things that come back, and you did what, or why did this break, and they're just things that you don't account for, which allows you to adapt the game. But talk about how you guys synthesize that in a feedback loop, and how did that change some of the things that you're doing, even for like your future plans. So now we'll flip the clock and say, in the year, 20 years from now, what does this game look like, or what does Bard Card then start to maybe game number 2, 3, 5, 17, depending, Tell us about how players have affected what you do.
Oh yeah. Players have been everything, but it took a little while at the beginning to bring in people, people more than just me or John, to actually test it out. So at the beginning, it's really just kind of like me, and then showing John what I'm doing. And then there's also a third person. It's my brother Sean. Sean, if you're out there listening, super crucial in the direction of the game. Like he's the OG beta tester. He's played every build. He's also got like a mind for mechanics, so he helps me through a lot of those types of problems. But at the beginning, we're just kind of messing around. Like, what kind of game could this be? We mentioned at first there was no story. There were like no real quests. It was just kind of get as far in the dungeon, finding weapons and stuff as you could, and then me trying to balance around that. And it just really wasn't like super fun, and it was really, really rough. trying to figure out different ways to make it, what was a process. I'm trying to get to the points where the players actually started playing it and giving valuable feedback that we started listening to. So at first, once we started adding quests and like a storyline, we're trying to plan out like how long should this game be, and thinking like how many floors deep should it be, how long should the gameplay be, how many different like quests we should have. So the original first iteration, I would say, with the actual storyline and quests, had things paced out really far. So Bard card today, the first time you meet your brother Lucas, that's like floor 7. When you find Gan the Weasel, that's somewhere hidden on floor 5. I hope I'm not giving away too many spoilers for people who haven't played the game, but that's
floors.
just how it is. Yeah, but the first iteration, you didn't meet your brother until like floor 22. Like
Wow.
It was a long way, and no one really got that far. I mean, my brother would, because I would give him hints. I was like, oh, you should do this or that.
Yeah.
You didn't get Gan until floor 13. There were no checkpoints. You would just go, die, restart, lose everything. So initial feedback was interesting too. Like I've learned how to ask better questions to folks, right? Give it to a couple of friends and they'd play it. And I'd say I'd have questions like, was the game hard? And they'd be like, no, it's actually pretty easy. But they only get to like floor 10 and there's like 30 floors. So I'm like, there's something wrong here. Like they didn't want to keep playing. And it's because it was just like a really hard, maybe not fun game to play.
Maybe.
I don't know, John, what were you, maybe. Yeah. What were your, I don't want to go in. There's a whole list of things that we changed that were really crucial to the game. But John, what were do you remember your first thoughts, like playing like the really early builds, like even the web builds? Like, do you remember the web builds?
No.
When it used to be just like a browser-based game?
The screenshots, because we looked at them recently, and I was just, dude, I've been amazed by every step of the way. Honestly, it's like always getting better from my perspective. Wow, we can do this, So I'm just like the worst person to ask. Like, testers get less useful over time, I feel like
if we reuse them.
Like I find the first impression feedback from new users to be fascinating now. We're getting so much more of that because and I feel like we have to prioritize that sometimes because we're going to have a constant stream of new players, and so some those fresh eyes are really great. But
and if we don't, and something we've learned is that if we don't listen to like certain feedback, it's just going to keep coming up over and over.
Oh yeah,
sure.
People say the same thing. It's like gold, like that's what we do,
Yeah. But then actually actually acting on the feedback, because for sometimes you're like, well, this is how the game is, and
right.
We're close to it, and we're like, oh, this is but no, definitely learning how to build with and not for has been a huge journey. Like one example, and this was from Adam, good friend of mine who was testing back in the day. There's energy in Bard card, and the idea is that you have a finite amount of strength to actually go through the dungeon, or else you'll collapse from starvation, you're tired or whatnot. But it's also a mechanic that constrains people to the card matching. We don't want people to be able to match forever, right? That wouldn't be super fun. So originally you would lose energy with every move, whether or not you matched cards. And I'm thinking, well, that's just you because you're cutting actions or whatever. And my buddy Adam was like, well, this isn't fun. I feel like I'm losing even for matching a card. My energy is still going down. And I try to rationalize in my head, well, no, you're executing an action, it takes energy, and I'm explaining to him, but he's like, yeah, but that's not fun. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. But then making that change, it was a really easy change in the code. It's hey, if you make a match, you don't lose energy. It just felt like a better game. I'm matching is even more compelling. I actually want to do this. If there are situations where I might not want to match these two cards, maybe I do because I'm low on energy or whatever the reason. And people really enjoyed that part. That's one example of just the core mechanic that just has really changed. Quests. So this idea of tasks, I don't know. I guess I kind of know. So there's you can pick up a task and it will show up in the UI like, oh, you can, give Bianca these loaves of bread or whatever the task is. There used to not be a tasks UI. It was just kind of like implicit, like, oh, you've talked to this person and you're going to kind of remember that you've talked to this person. No, you're not. And this was feedback we didn't get directly from a specific person. It was more looking at the game data. So we collect certain types of just like gameplay data. It's nothing like that's personally identifiable. It's like, this hashed person, this hashed ID, got this far or whatever. So we can take the data and see, hey, how many people have, for instance, found like the rusty sword? And then I look and like very low amounts. I'm like, oh, well, that's why people aren't getting very far, because that's kind of like a core item that you really need to advance. So I'm like, why aren't people doing this? And then maybe asking some people that I know that are playing, and they're like, I don't know where to get this. So just trying to think of ways to make these quests like more, more in your face. And actually that is feedback we got from like some early players. It's like, hey, like these quests it'd be cool to know that I'm actually working towards something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Bard card used to be so cryptic. It's like, oh, we just want people to figure out everything.
Well, because it came intuitive to you guys, so you're like, oh, why isn't it intuitive to other people? Well, they didn't build it. It's like, no, it's okay. I was just gonna ask you about that, but you guys kind of got into it a little bit. Like, how do you guys take like criticism of your game? Like, if somebody, I know now you're probably to the point because you've iterated on it a lot, but at the beginning it must have been really difficult to take some kind of like constructive criticism like that. Or was it something you guys like kind of just figured out into the sauce kind of the game? You're like, yeah, we're gonna have to change this game. We just don't know. Or were you guys just really gung ho on like, this is the way it's gonna be?